live room at Beach Road Studios with our friend Siegfried Meyer. Just oogling over all this lovely equipment, this beautiful, beautiful live room. If you've never been out here, get a hold of Zeg, probably on Facebook, one of the places to get a hold of them. Very hospitable. Oh man, just enjoyed the day out here. It's been just a killer afternoon, so much fun. We got a video on this mixer, the story behind this mixer, which is really, really cool. I just love all the guitars on the wall, the wood, the sound in here, this beautiful live room with some nice skylights as well out here near Godrich, Ontario. Zeg and his friend Haley for showing us around here. Thanks again. Everybody have an awesome, fantastic day. And, I got to go clean up my drool marks on the floor now. You're rebuilding this.
This is a Sound Workshop 32C from probably around 1978, 79. So this was actually custom built and commissioned to Alex Lifeson of Rush. So this was his console for probably about 5 or 6 years.
Really?
And then it got sold to the keyboard player from Glass Tiger.
Okay.
And yeah, so he had it for a lot of years, and then it came to these other guys in Hamilton that had it for a batch of years, and throughout those years, it was modified in different ways that, kind of changed it from what the original console was. And then when I acquired it about 5 years ago, and I'm taking way too long to do it,
right?
But I'm kind of bringing it back to its original state.
True 14 channel?
It's actually a 20 channel.
Oh, 20.
Yeah, so it's got 16 meters, but there's actually 20 channels. 20 channels with 20 monitor returns.
So the 20 XLR is in on it?
Yeah. Yep,
okay.
Yep. Yeah, mic or line, so you could feed line level as well, and then it's got the patch bay. But it was an unbalanced console, so all the I/O besides the mic in and line in is unbalanced. So that's one of the modifications that I'm making to it. So it'll be a fully balanced console that you can hook any tape machine or Pro Tools system or any other DAW to.
And what's your plan with it? What are you going to do with it?
I have no idea. It's just so cute, and it's got such cool history.
It's got cool history.
I love the Browns. Like it's kind of like the era of when I was born. So right. I just feel like I'll probably just use it as a little sidecar somewhere.
Did you wipe down the leather, or did you leave all the DNA?
Oh no, I actually scrubbed the shit out of this thing because it was dirty. It was very dirty.
It was a dirty girl.
Probably some coke in the channel somewhere.
No, beautiful.
But yeah, it's just another little passion project.
Beautiful. We're at Beach Road Studios with our friend Siegfried Meyer, just admiring and drooling over his equipment and all the cool stuff in his studio, visiting the live room and all the rack-mounted equipment, the eclectic stuff here that he has in the studio itself.
It's all junk!
It's all junk. He says it's all junk. I think it's all cool. There's some really cool stuff there, some memorabilia for those of you that have recorded on 2-inch tape, and 1/4-inch tape masters and 1/2-inch tape stuff. Cool studio monitors, a little bit of everything. Oh. Okay, I'm just going to switch things over here, so just bear with me a second while I flip my audio back over. Thing does that, but that's just what it. Here we go. All right, so that was Siegfried Meyer's studio, Beach Road Studios near Godrich, Ontario. We were out there for a little ride on our motorcycles the other day, and Zeg was kind enough to show us around and spend some time with me, chat music. And those of you that know me know that I love everything music. That's right. I'm trying to kill time here for a second while I add one more thing, because I got a little surprise for Tom tonight. And I want to make sure that it just goes all right. Hopefully this works really, really good. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to introduce my co-host. This is Tom Jokic from Famous Lost Words. Yes, it's a weekly podcast featuring classic interviews that haven't been heard since they first aired, with Juno Award-winning songwriter, legendary much music, VJ Christopher Ward, and longtime chum producer for FM radio, Tom Jokic. All right, so Tom, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thanks, Kenny. How are you?
I'm good, man.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Toronto. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Okay, cut it now. All right, jeez, don't get carried away here. How you doing, buddy?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Feels like a
Had to
week
throw
since
that.
we talked to each other.
Yeah, but
Actually,
it's
it's
been a week.
2 weeks.
It has been 2 weeks, but we've been back and forth a little bit on chat,
Yeah, for sure.
shooting ideas back and forth, and talking about tonight's game plan.
Yep, that's right.
Oh
That's right.
man.
I'm a bit of an organizer now. Having produced a morning radio show in Toronto for 32 and a half years, I'm the kind of guy who, was trained basically. You kind of got to know what you're talking about when you get in there. So I'm one of those guys when you say, we're going to do this, I'm going on my computer, what am I going to talk about? Like, how can I make this fun? And how can I add a little bit? It's all about, I have a theory that when you talk about something, you should always give it some value added. So it's not just a conversation about the thing, which is great, but also
Right.
some kind of factual stuff or really fun stuff that makes it just even more interesting than hopefully it normally would be.
Well, I told you you'd make a great student, man, and that's a fine sign. As I said, a fine sign of good journalism when you're willing
Yeah.
to look up the facts to back up your story. So
Thanks, man. Are you going
good
to
on
come
you.
on this screen? I feel kind of I feel kind of naked and afraid here.
There we go.
There we go.
How's
That's
that?
much better. Oh,
We can
jeez.
do the Brady thing. Hang on a second. Let's see if we can do the Brady thing here. Flip you around here. No, it's not gonna. Oh no! We just switched sides. There we go. No, it wouldn't let me do it. I was going to put you down below me and say, Tom, this is God speaking to you. All right. So before the show, we were talking about this story that came out by TMZ reporting that Jerry Lee Lewis was dead at the age of 87.
Right.
And so Variety reported on this as well and said that Jerry Lee Lewis is alive as erroneous death report is retracted. Somebody
Wow.
mucked up there, man.
Yeah. Here's the thing that, when Tom Petty died, Rolling Stone reported that he had died, and then they had to retract it. But we all knew that it was just a matter of hours. It was probably 2 or 3 hours later that they confirmed that he had passed away. And, I have a lot of feelings about Jerry Lee Lewis, some of them great and some of them very bad. But I hope he's alive and well. I suspect he's alive but not doing well, which is why TMZ reported what they reported.
Right.
That's my suspicion. I mean, there have been some, celebrities who were announced as being dead. There's a lot of, there's every few months there's a, celebrity death hoax. There was one with Eminem. There was one with Beyonce a number of years ago. I remember in 2010 they announced that that Gordon Lightfoot had passed away. That was 12 years ago. Gord is still around, and he was kind of shocked. He was shocked to hear that he was dead, but also he was really put out by the fact
Mortified.
that his family was hearing that he was dead. So they're calling his office, right? And they're kind of going like, what's happening? Is Gord still around and all that? And it was really traumatic for him to have to deal with it.
That's a crazy thing, though, when something like that gets reported, and it's
Yeah.
I mean, maybe a different if something is imminent, but something like this is out of the blue. It's not imminent.
Yes.
I mean, we know most older rockers are living on borrowed time. I mean, they didn't live. They didn't live. It's like my brother always says to me: "If I knew I was going to live to be this old, I would have taken better care of myself when I was younger."
One other thing I'd like to say about Jerry Lee Lewis is that when Sam Phillips started Sun Records was initially a haven for Black artists in the Memphis area.
and all that. So he worked with a lot of artists, and he recorded, Ike Turner on the original rock and roll song called Rocket 88 with a vocalist named Jackie Brenston. And he did a lot of R&B. And then he switched over because of Elvis and because of Carl Perkins and Jerry Lee Lewis and Johnny Cash and Roy Orbison. He switched over to rock and roll along with some of the other black artists. But the white artists, of course, are the ones that hit it big for a number of reasons that we don't have to get into right now. But the racial
Right.
issue was and remains a major one in the States. But of all the artists that Sam Phillips worked with, he said by far the most talented was Jerry Lee Lewis. More
Right.
talented than Elvis, more talented than Carl Perkins and Johnny Cash and all the others who were staggering talents on themselves. But he said he could play better than anybody. He could whip up a crowd even better than Elvis. He could even kind of sing better than Elvis. Now, Jerry Lee had kind of a shortened rock and roll career because of, the fallout that comes when you marry your 13-year-old cousin.
A lot of crazy things there, man.
Yeah. They stayed married, by the way, for 17 years. Imagine this. You're married for 17 years, and when you get divorced, you're 30. That shows you how young that young lady was.
Wow.
And so it was a shocking development. He lost like a whole lot of fans and support, and he got into so much trouble. But he came back later as a country singer, and a really successful one, I think in the late 60s, early 70s. So anyway,
Right.
I'm
Right.
meandering a little bit, but
Interesting
very
story, man.
story.
I love the story because in behind all these things are other micro stories, so they're always worth talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. So you mentioned that we were going to talk tonight about the fledgling live music industry and the slow death it seems to be suffering. I don't know if anybody else is experiencing that, but if what we're saying tonight in the show resonates with any of you, want to see them here in the comments.
Yeah.
If you're experiencing a change in the live venue arena in your locale, let us know, and you're welcome to always come online with us too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I know that you talked about this last week. You talked about how the live music scene is struggling. And the thing is that 2023 was supposed to be the comeback year, right? Assuming that, the worst of COVID and, that COVID is in our rearview mirror in 2023. So many bands had huge tours planned, but also mid-level, lower-level bands. They all had their tours planned, mid-level and lower-level, big, medium, small tours. And what happened is because of the continuing pandemic and most of all inflation, all of these bands are starting to cancel. So you remember the group Garbage from the 90s and early 2000s, right?
Yep,
Shirley Manson.
Yep. They were, I think they were the first to actually put it on Instagram.
Yeah. So she says live music is under enormous strain. We are seeing so many precious talents buckle under the economic injustice of a system. Everyone vying for a handful of venues in order to make a small amount of money to tide them over until the next show. Most sailing without a dollar of insurance. So that's very interesting because that's dangerous, right? To play without insurance. And a large percentage of musicians that you know and love are likely living from hand to mouth. And she says, when the live scene fails, the whole ship goes down entirely. And she's, just terrified about what's going to happen. There was an article on Global News on their website the other day by Alan Cross, who's a really great music journalist, and he does a podcast called The Ongoing History of New Music, and he's written about why the music industry is in trouble. Inflation, like everything has gone up. Bands like Animal Collective and a whole bunch of other bands that I can't remember right off the bat. There was a singer named Cassandra Jenkins who tried to cut costs by touring with just two other musicians instead of a full band. The plan reached that the story of that reaches the ears of her promoter, and he threatens to cut her fee. So, even that, like, it's a no win.
Yeah, trying to be creative and trying to cut a couple of corners that you think you can do,
Yeah,
to still pull it off and make some financial sense to you at
yeah,
the end of the day.
yeah,
Here's an interesting thing. I'm gonna really reach here, okay? But here's part of the whole craziness that I see in this. Music being one microcosm of the greater whole. And you look at what's happening with the economy right now with this crazy inflation just going through the roof, and the government's blaming big business because they're saying big business is using it as an opportunity to price gouge, right?
yes. Mhm.
But where is the government in protecting the citizens around this price gouging? It's not happening. So something's not right there.
Yeah, I
Off the
do.
hop.
You know what though? The studies have shown that the large companies and the government is investigating our grocery stores now
Yeah.
because their prices went up far higher than inflation. And in back channels, you actually have evidence of these companies saying we are going to use the excuse of inflation to raise prices.
And I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that. And I
Yeah.
don't want to get too far into this because it
It's
starts
not a
going
political show. It's a
No, it
music show.
starts going to the political stuff. But what I do want to say there is that there's the whole other side of it. You can't keep printing money and not expect the cost of inflation to go up.
Yeah.
You can't print money to solve the problem. You have to find a balance somewhere. And that
Yeah.
balance is, Tom, what happens if you don't have enough money at the end of the month to pay your bills?
Yeah. Yeah. You have
Right?
to make cuts.
Right. You make
Yeah.
sure, but you don't. You make sure that you have enough money to last you till the end of the month,
Yeah.
right? Because you're responsible with your finances. Why doesn't the government live that way? That's all I'm saying,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Another thing that's a problem is that the U.S. when the federal interest rates in the states go up, our loonie is weaker in the states because
Yeah.
the American dollar is so strong. So that is a cost to bands that are trying to play there.
Yeah.
Brexit has been a huge effect on these
Yep.
bands, and it's part of it is economic, and well,
Here's
I won't get
here's
into-
here's another thing though. I'll tell you. Here's another thing. It does relate, and it hits the pocketbook of musicians. The IRS. If you're a Canadian musician, and you play gigs down in the States, you have to get a work permit to go down to the US first
Yeah.
and foremost. Okay, so you need to pay for a work permit. Okay. Second of all, the IRS wants to withhold 30% of your earnings. Now, why is that? Why does the IRS want to do that? Because Canada and the US have a tax treaty, last I heard, right? And Canadian artists pay their Canadian taxes to Revenue Canada, and Revenue Canada settles the difference with the IRS. That's how it works. And it works the other way if you're American doing shows in Canada and earning money
Yeah.
in Canada. Same
Yeah.
deal. They shouldn't, first of all, withhold 30%. That's wrong.
Yeah.
If you've got a tax treaty and you're filing your taxes every year, all you need to do is fill out a W-8 form that exempts you from U.S. taxes. That's all you got to do. And then they should honor that and not hold back 30% tax. I fight for artists every day who are getting a 30% hold tax from the IRS.
Wow.
Right?
That's great insight, Ken. That's fantastic.
And that's one of the reasons why artists are hurting, because they're losing 30% of their revenue to withholding taxes that the government has no right to withhold because they have a tax treaty. So that's
Right.
number one. That's a big problem in my
Yeah.
eyes. Here's
Yeah.
a second one. If you're a Canadian artist, okay, so Brian Vollmer of Helix, okay, great example. I was at his place the other day and he's telling me this story. So they got to book flights, okay? They've got a show in Key West, Florida. It's their last show for the year. They're playing this big party down in Key West, right?
Right.
So he's got to fly up to Canada, right, from
Yeah.
Florida, hook up with the band in Toronto, fly back to Florida, do the show. Then he's got to fly back to Toronto with the band and then fly back to Florida for the rest of the winter where he lives.
Why does he have to do that as part of the
Canadian
permit
work
stuff?
permit, Canadian work
Oh,
permit to the U.S. He has to go to the U.S. He has to come out of the U.S. to get his permit. He's got to go back to the U.S. to do his show. He's got to clock out by going back to Canada. And once he's clocked out, he can come back in just as a snowbird, right?
wow. Wow.
How wrong is that?
Yeah.
Like, that's so wrong on so many levels. All he really should have to do is after he does his show in Florida, he could sit down in Florida, wait for the band to fly down from Toronto. They do their show. He walks into the consulate, the American consulate, and said, "We fulfilled our work permit. We've done our show. I'm returning to my winter residence here in Florida."
Yeah.
Ding dong.
Yeah.
Isn't that easy? Oh, no, but the government makes you fly out, fly back in, fly back out, and in.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow. They
man.
make it hard.
Can you imagine? And when and he was having to do that with Arrive Can apps. Every time every time they flew to the US, they had to do that.
Jesus.
Stupid.
Yeah, it really is. Just to follow up a little bit on what I was talking about Brexit, is before the UK pulled out of the EU, musical acts could freely travel throughout the continent, but now they have to deal with customs and visas going from the UK into the rest of the EU, and so that has created more backlog of first of all time, but also money. And the pound, the British pound is so low now that it's also another problem as part of that mix.
Yeah, and here's another thing. Costs for everything have gone up tremendously.
Yeah.
Right. Transportation companies, like all those big transport trucks that haul around all that gear in the stage from show to show, those are contracted private contractors that do that professionally.
Yes.
That's I don't know that they're owned by the band, except I think Kiss might have their own production crew.
I see.
Like they might even have their own transport trucks.
Right.
Knowing Stanley and Simmons, they have their finger on all of it.
Absolutely.
So I would suspect that somehow they're connected to the company that does all hauling of all their production gear. But that's expensive. Look at the price of diesel fuel. It's over $2 a liter here in Canada.
Yeah.
Right. In the States, what is it? It's probably $8. I don't know. What is it? Is it up to $8 a gallon in the States? I don't know. You tell me. I don't know what it is, but I know.
I don't think it's that high.
I know gas has gone extremely high, but it's 8. I mean, if you figured it out here, 4 liters is like, close to a gallon.
Yeah.
Right. That's $8 a gallon here in Canada.
They don't pay what we pay. They don't pay what we pay. No.
But truckers are paying $8 a gallon,
Jeez.
literally, for diesel fuel here in Canada.
Yeah.
So think of the price of, what do those things get? I don't know, 15 kilometers to the gallon?
Yeah.
They don't even get 15, maybe 12.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's an expense, right? Fuel is an expense.
Absolutely.
I'm sure everything associated with production costs, the sound production companies and all that other stuff. But you also posted a very important one in a link to me, and that is Ticketmaster and Live Nation under investigation by the Department of Justice?
Oh, Kenny, I think you sent that to me. I haven't looked at that article yet.
Well, I didn't get a chance to look through the whole article either, so we're going to maybe have to do a little bit of homework on that one because
let's do that next week.
Yeah, it's a good one because I know that Live Nation and Ticketmaster are in some hot water right now, and it's over this what do they call that pricing game that they play now?
Dynamic pricing?
Yeah, dynamic pricing. What the excuse me, what is dynamic pricing?
It's like surge pricing on your Uber.
How does that work?
Well, when Uber gets busy, they start charging more. when they're less busy, right? That's how it
So it,
works.
so if it's a popular concert and it's lots of ticket sales, the prices just keep going up and up and up and up.
I guess, it's they do their I think it's beyond market. It's really awful. Like, Springsteen tickets will go for what, $250? And then StubHub, which I believe is owned by Ticketmaster, is posting them a few minutes after they sell out for $1,300. Right? It's the same company. Like, how is any of that legal?
Well, and that and there. So who's making all this money? Because it's not going to the artists.
Well, the artists are making some of the money. Like, that's where, the main income was coming from for artists these days is touring.
Right. So, but I'm saying if they're having to cancel shows, what's happening there?
Well,
There must not be
there
any
has
money in it for them.
No, they're screwed. No, that's the problem. That's what Shirley Manson of Garbage is talking about. The fact that it's too expensive. You have to tour without insurance, which is shocking. Right? Like, because anything can happen in a concert, right? You could if one light standard falls over, or if one speaker tower topples over, or if somebody, even if an artist like knocks their mic stand off the stage and plonks somebody on the head, you're on the hook.
Hey, listen, I have to tell you, we were at a Kiss show, and Ace Frehley, you know how he used to shoot the rocket off his guitar?
Yeah.
He hit a set of lights up above him, and the set of lights came crashing down right in front of him
Holy smoke.
on the stage. Oh yeah.
Was he scared shitless from that, or what?
Yeah, I think so.
Or was it part of the plan?
No, I don't think it was part of the plan. I think he was his usual back in the day, space ace.
Yeah.
And I don't think he was paying attention to where he was pointing the rocket. And I think the rocket hit us at lights. It was like a three tree, like three lights on one tree that popped down.
Yeah. When I first saw that effect, like, I've seen Kiss a number of times, so I've seen that effect with Ace and the guy who replaced him, Tommy, so many times.
Yeah.
But the first time I saw that was August 4th, 1979 on the Dynasty Tour. And my mind was freaking blown. I could not believe what I had just seen. Because I expected the spitting of the blood and the breathing fire by Gene. But I did not expect Ace to aim his guitar and fire a rocket and blow something up.
It's a rocket show. I mean, it you know what? It's like watching a comic book unfold when you go to a Kiss concert.
Yeah.
It really is. They give you the whole package. You get a show along with good, rockin' tunes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And those guys found that formula way back in the day. People didn't really get the whole idea of the show. Alice Cooper was the guy who really, got that rolling.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, I think the bands that still do really, really well are bands that put on a real show.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that's really important, whether you're a mainstream artist or whether you're an independent artist. Aside from bringing great music to the stage, what else are you bringing to the show?
Yeah.
Because we do call them shows.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are some artists, you can think of like folk artists, and Neil Young standing on the stage of Massey Hall in 1970, just playing by himself and commanding that audience, right?
Right.
And even with songs that they'd never heard before. I don't know if you have that album, Neil Young Live at Massey Hall, just released a few years ago, and the audio is amazing, and he's amazing, and he's playing Old Man for them for the first time. They'd never heard it before, right? So it's a revelation, and there are so many artists around today that can do that can command an audience. But I think that if your stage show isn't dynamic, then your personality has to be, or your music has to be able to draw people in.
Right.
And in this time of, I would suggest lower, attention spans, maybe there's not as much of a demand for an artist that can just kind of compel you with an acoustic guitar and really deep lyrics. I don't know. I'm sure there are tons of them that are good. I just don't know of a whole bunch of them right now.
I think it varies from what audiences come to expect.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, if you go to a Neil Young show, you're more in for a treat musically than you are from a point of, we're going to put on a show for you.
Yes. Now I've seen Neil once. It was 10 years ago, December of 2012.
Yeah.
Scotiabank Arena, and I think Neil was doing what he does to this day. He goes out there and plays whatever the hell he wants. And he played for 28 minutes. The first 28 minutes, I didn't recognize a note. And I think it was only two. I think by then he'd only played 2 songs. And he was experimenting with fuzz, and he was like feedback against his amp. And I think it was with Crazy Horse. And take out the first half hour, and it was a pretty darn good show. But there were moments where you're going, "Oh my God, Neil! Like, you gotta wrap up this song. Like, you just do." And
it was a jam.
It was a jam. It was a jam of unknown songs. So
unknown to you, but they probably thought they knew them.
Yes.
Right. So we're at the bottom of the hour right now. What do you want to do? You want to continue with this story, or we want to save a little more for next time up the bat?
No, I think we've covered the troubles in the music industry. You and I are going to follow this, and we're also going to follow the health of Jerry Lee Lewis. But speaking of health, let's talk a little bit about Brian Johnson. Just did an interview with a couple of outlets. One of them is Rolling Stone, and just the behind the scenes of when he had to leave AC/DC in 2016 because of his hearing problems. And he says that he fell into this deep well of despair. He wouldn't even call it depression. It was beyond that. And it was just like he couldn't even bring himself to watch Axl Rose be the front man for AC/DC. And what happened is his hearing went, he had no hearing in one ear and 30% in the other ear. And what happened is just a few months ago or a couple of years ago, he had been receiving treatment, and he found out that there was this in-ear thing that he could have installed in his ears for concerts. And we've heard of in-ear monitors for a long time, but this guy, his name is Stephen Ambrose, and he invented this new hearing aid, and it goes in his ear, and it completely replicates hearing loud music and not being disturbed by it or not being deafened further by it. And he said it was a game changer. And the first time he tried it out was just a few days ago or a couple of weeks ago when he performed at the Taylor Hawkins tribute. And he did Back in Black. And he said he felt like he was 25 years old again. And he's over 75 now.
Yeah.
So
nothing worse for a singer who is having trouble hearing, because it's not just hearing your own voice in the mix, but it's hearing your voice relative to the other instruments in the mix.
Yeah.
Because you don't know if you're singing, you don't know if you're singing in the pocket, you don't know if you're singing out of the pocket, you don't know if your vocal is, on top of the snare, all that stuff in the mix, if you can't hear it as a singer, you can get lost pretty quick.
Absolutely. And so, he says, like I said before, he was just heartbroken about watching Axl Rose, and he couldn't even do it. And so they're asking him if he's going to tour with AC/DC again. And he said he'd love to, but COVID is still a thing. And he hopes that the guys want him back. And he's pretty humbled by the whole situation, considering like he was basically curled up in his, I think his mother-in-law or father-in-law's attic. He was curled up in the fetal position when all this was going on. He was so sad. and
Right.
so he's, he feels like he's had a second chance at life, which is great. And so, good luck to Brian.
Well,
Brian.
you know what? I mean, even with all the stuff that went on with Phil Rudd over the years, he came in and out of the band, and as far as I know, there's no hard feelings between Brian and Angus,
No, I don't think so.
which I believe now is really sort of the heart and soul of the band. It was Angus and Malcolm, who were really the heart and soul of that band for many many years. Um,
Was
so
Phil Rudd
yeah.
the drummer?
Well, it's been two different drummers, right? Phil Rudd was, did some stuff with them, and then he had ran into legal troubles,
Yes, he sure did. Yeah.
and then can't remember. I'm trying to think of the other drummer's name. It's escaping me at this point in time, but um, I believe he is the drummer that was on their last tour with them.
Okay.
Nice segue to that whole thing, Tom, is that hearing loss is pretty common among musicians. If you are a musician and you're watching the show or listening in, if you've got a problem with hearing loss, let us know. We'd like to hear about that. Hear about that literally, and know specifically what type of hearing loss you have. The most common thing is tinnitus, and why it happens and how to cope. And tinnitus is that ringing in your ears that's you might hear when you've been to a concert. You know how you got all that noise in your head after a concert and it takes a while for that to settle down? Well, imagine that going on 24/7.
Yeah. The
Right?
first artist I heard of having that where it really affected his life and his work was Pete Townsend. But he
Yep.
still plays. I imagine then he's got those in-ear monitors too, so it can control what he's hearing and the balance.
Yeah, it's interesting. Now, when we were talking about this, I started, doing a little homework as well, and came across this one article about 8 famous musicians with hearing loss.
I see.
So now I don't know if they put this in any specific order, but they did say that Neil Young
Oh,
has difficulty with his hearing, and here's the interesting thing: is that live sound at concerts can reach 140 decibels. So that's enough to hurt your ears too. But the biggest culprit, believe it or not, and we're talking about this as well, is cymbals, and in particular crash cymbals. They're particularly hard on the little hairs inside your ear that transmit sounds to your eardrum. And if those little hairs get broken off due to damage, so think about that. Every time that crash cymbal hits that certain frequency, it's literally shearing hairs off inside your ear.
jeez. Wow.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I don't know if I'll have to look a little bit more to see if those hairs actually regenerate. But there's also sensory neural hearing loss as well. So that's that continued bombardment of certain frequencies. And so sometimes I think it's also the brain protecting itself and shutting off those frequencies and saying, I just don't like those.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's
Right.
right.
And so, I mean, if you traumatize your brain enough times, your brain will go, I kind of don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So some of that loss could actually be neural hearing loss as well from continued assault on the eardrums. And of course, that sound gets translated in your head,
Yeah.
in that wonderful thing between your ears called your brain.
Have you ever noticed that if you ever either plug your ears with your fingers or wear earplugs, the music actually sounds better because whatever it is, the noise often gets filtered and I don't even understand how it happens, but it cleans up the sound sometimes for me anyway.
Yeah, ambient air. So it's what happens is when those drivers in your earbuds are moving,
Yeah.
right? It's a magnet, right? And that magnet is vibrating and it's moving. When it's moving air, right? boom, 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 boom,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Even those low bass frequencies are hitting your eardrum, boom, 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 right? That's
Yeah,
how
that's
you
why
hear
you can
that.
feel the bass. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can feel the bass. So when you think about what's happening there, right? They're pulling air because they're moving air. So they're pulling ambient air around the earbuds. But if you seal the earbuds nice and tight, have
Yeah.
you notice everything gets more enhanced, right?
Yeah.
Because now you have no ambient air coming in. It's your ears are completely sealed to those earbuds now.
Mm, okay.
Those you can get some of them that actually have the little rubber um, rings on them.
Right.
So when you put them in, they actually seal to your ear canal.
Yeah.
Because nobody,
Um,
I mean, we're not all made the same. How can that work, right? One set of earbuds fits all. Come on.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't
When
think
I,
so.
over the years with with um, my DJing, I had to be very careful to obviously play behind the speakers, right?
Yep.
And with if I had an on stage monitor, I had to make sure that I had it at a reasonable level, one that could still convey the energy of the music, so that I could kind of get into it, but not too loud to damage my hearing. And of
Right.
course, almost 40-year career in radio, you're wearing headphones a lot of the time,
Yep.
and you've got to make sure that when you turn up your headphones, that I made it a point to turn up my headphones and then just turn it down just a touch,
Yeah.
just a little bit lower. And also, when you're what for this is kind of a dumb example, but when you're on the radio, you can you're hearing things better than your audience is, because they're in a car in a listening to a speaker and there's traffic or whatever.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to things really loud on headphones, you're hearing things differently than your audience is. So by turning it down, it's more accurate to what they're hearing.
True that.
So if things are really low in your headphones, you're kind of thinking, well, the audience can't probably hear that little sound effect that you're adding. So you have to kind of play to that. It's a smart way of producing a radio show, or even speaking on the being a DJ. So
Yeah. Good. I wear reference headphones
mhm.
when I do this show,
Yeah.
mostly because I want to make sure I can hear everything.
Yes.
And because I do my stuff a little bit differently. I actually broadcast through my digital audio workstation, as opposed to a mixer, because I don't want to have to reconfigure everything in my studio when I have to go back to recording and mixing music. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of lazy that way. So that's another reason that I do it. Another person that famous person with hearing loss, Ozzy Osbourne,
Right.
Phil
Nuts.
Collins.
Phil Collins, did you say?
Phil Collins.
Yeah, Phil
Yep.
has a lot of issues. He has such damage from playing the drums that he can't even grip a drumstick anymore.
Yeah.
And that's been going on for a good long time. I think his son was in the last was playing drums in the last Genesis tour, the one that just wrapped up.
Drumming takes its toll on artists over the years. I mean, you think about it. They're the only guy up there that's moving almost every muscle in his body, every minute.
Yep.
Every minute that you're playing a song, if you're doing 20, if you're doing 120 beats a minute, he's moving 120 times a minute.
Yeah.
As a guitar player, you're not moving 120 times a
No,
minute.
it's a
And you're not
completely
moving.
different skill.
Yeah, and you're
It
not
is
using.
very physical being a drummer. Yeah.
Oh, and you look at some drummers when they're drumming, right? Their head is constantly in motion, right? And if you're Dave Grohl, I don't know how the guy's even got a neck on him. He's constantly shaking his head when he plays, right?
Yeah. Or
Um,
Taylor Hawkins. Remember how he
yep,
moved? He
yep,
was like Animal from the Muppets, like
yep,
great drummer, but it was kinetic energy from the word go.
yeah. Our drummer's the same guy. I mean, he's like, Mike. I always say to Mike, how does a skinny little Italian guy like you hit the drums
Like
like
me,
that, man?
part
you gotta
Italian, right
You
here,
gotta.
part
I'm gonna
Italian.
send you some. I'm gonna send you some tracks, and you hear this guy play, and if you saw him, he's not a big guy, man.
Yeah,
He's smaller than me, and man, can that guy just? He knows just how to hit those drums just right, man. Make them
yeah.
sound good.
I started
Um,
playing when I was about, I think I was about 10 or 11 when I first sat down and played. And my brother, who's 8 years older than me, was playing In the Midnight Hour by Wilson Pickett, right?
yep.
And their drummer didn't show up. They said, Tommy, go sit back there and play. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I did okay. I was doing good chicka, and then I did the and they were
Nice.
gobsmacked, like they were on the floor, shocked at how good I was. And I swear to God, Kenny, I was really good then, and I haven't gotten better by 1% since then. I'm still the same guy. That's it.
Oh man. Yeah, some things never change.
Yeah, exactly right.
Brian Wilson, the Beach Boys, another person with hearing loss, Eric Clapton,
Mhm.
and as you mentioned earlier, Pete Townsend of the Who,
Yeah.
and that I mean, think about where he always stood in relation to Keith Moon, right?
And yeah, and also where he stood in relation to all those speakers. I hope
Oh,
those speakers were just a prop, because I know that a lot of some bands, dress the stage with Marshall amps, Marshall speakers, right?
yeah, yeah.
Stacks. But I hope they're not all plugged in.
Here's an interesting thing. Some bands used to do this. They used to all the Marshall stacks around them. They were all empty cabinets.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even the heads, even there's only one head there that was actually working, and
Right.
it was only powering one 412 cabinet.
Yeah.
And they might have been miking two speakers at most off that 412.
Yeah.
And they'd probably mic them diagonally, one of the bottom speakers and one of the top speakers.
Right.
But that would be it, right?
Crazy.
And it's crazy. And they'd have all these cabinets, and they were all empty. Kiss used to do that.
Yeah.
They
Not
they, they would
surprised.
they would have one live amplifier on the rest of the stage, and all of it was just all dummy. And some of those cabinets were just empty, so there was nothing in them.
Yeah. One of my favorite Kiss tricks is a few years ago when I saw them, I noticed that they were still using a lot of flames, but they were also projecting a lot of flames on the back screens. So so two flames would go up, and of course you can feel the flames at the back of the hall wherever you are,
Oh
right?
yeah.
You can
Oh
still
yeah.
feel them
Yeah.
no matter where you sit.
Yeah.
But the whole stage looked like it was on fire, and I realized, oh, that's just the screens. There's two flames, but it looks like there's 30. That's a great cost-cutting measure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We digress slightly. Chris Martin, Coldplay.
Yeah.
And of course, the one that would be a little more elusive to most people, but those that have ever studied music in school or whatever would know that Ludwig Beethoven
Oh yeah. Famously
suffered from hearing loss. Famously,
composed some of his greatest works while legally deaf.
he was stone deaf when he was composing some of those works.
Cannot imagine.
Yeah,
I cannot
crazy,
imagine.
eh?
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, great music, man. Moonlight Sonata is one of the great songs ever
definitely.
made.
Definitely. Well, we're coming up to 48:36, Tom. What do you want to talk about now? You want to talk a little bit about promo stuff?
Well, yeah, we talked. One of the things that we teased about today's show was talking about branding.
Yes.
And so, when you're a band, you need to find your brand and promote it and get it out there. And it's kind of a complicated thing because you have to figure out what your brand is. And if you're a band, you have to agree on what your brand is. And it's kind of like a mission statement. And you have to determine what it is, what message it is you're telling, you want to convey to your audience. Is it political, or, are you a party band? Could you be both? And I think that the secret is making the message of your brand true to the artist, like reflective of what of the band or the artist.
Right. And so when I say mouth, tongue, and lips, what band do you think of?
Well, I'm going to say Kiss first, but of course you mean Rolling Stones.
Of course,
right?
of course.
Yeah.
Right. And so this iconic emblem right here.
Yeah.
is what I'm talking about. So something that trademarked the band was that piece of artwork, and that was on, t-shirts, on all kinds of stuff, right?
I think that was created by Andy Warhol.
Yeah, and so when you think about a logo like that,
Mhm.
that was part of the Rolling Stones brand,
Yeah.
right?
And, there's so many bands like, even the Rush logo that you're wearing, the Kiss logo is iconic. And so creating a logo, I think is really important. First of all, because it's a cohesive way of communicating with your audience about the name of the band. The design may indicate a little bit about the band, but also with young bands, with bands that are smaller, and even some mid-level bands, maybe they're going to be making more money off merch, t-shirts and hats and coffee mugs and whatever, than they are on record sales right now.
So,
And
so do you
it's not
mean you
touring.
mean you mean something like this? What do you think
That's
of
the
that?
one.
That something
That's
like
awesome. It's awesome.
I
But
can't take credit for that. Brent Dorner of Red D Film sent me that.
Brent hasn't checked in this week.
I know he
I'm a
usually
little
catches the
disappointed.
show on YouTube, so I'm not sure. So for those of you watching, you can catch the
Brent, are
show.
you there? Brent.
You can catch the show on YouTube. You can catch us on Twitch. You can catch us on Twitter. So we're on those 4 platforms as well as Facebook, and we broadcast on 2 places on Facebook, on my personal page as well as the Anytunes Records page as well. So oh, there he is. There is Brent. So
Hey, there he is.
Brent is responsible for that, and he has given me some great ideas. He's a real idea guy, man. I have great conversations with him all the time. It's really cool.
That's great.
Um, branding. Here's the thing that I get discouraged most often is bands will want to release their music without doing any kind of branding. It's like, we're going to put our songs out there and we hope somebody hears them.
And
Right?
then miraculously they'll go viral, right? That's what they're hoping for, but it's not that simple. Like you have to create something that people can attach to and hope it goes viral. But a lot of artists a lot of people are just pick up the guitar, spill my guts out onto the page with music and lyrics that mean a lot to me, and I don't
Right.
want to have to sell this. I just want to express myself as an artist. I'm honestly not. I'm not being sarcastic. I feel for them because they're only artists. They're not salespeople. They don't want to market their product. That's why you need someone to do it. But how do you do that? And be financially, in the black.
Well, and there's different ways that people can do it. I mean,
Mm.
there's a lot of DIY stuff available to
Mhm.
artists, and there's a lot of people that are really gifted at doing the DIY stuff. Here's the thing: is I look at this like being, if you're a food processor, be good at one thing. Right? Be good
Right.
at what is your gift? Your gift is you're a musician. Your gift is you're an artist. Your gift is that you have the ability to bring good live music to life, right? And be that, it's going to start with recording, but then you're going to get out there and you're going to play your music live to promote your recordings, right? I mean,
Right.
that's typically the old school cycle of music, is that you release music, you go out and tour it. You release music, you go out and tour it. um Maybe that's changing. I don't know. That could be changing.
Yeah, it
um
is. It is interesting because I think there's 2 types of people. That the type of person that I talked about, who are not necessarily attention seekers. They're artists who want to express themselves, and then there's people who want to be in front of an audience, and you know, maybe for fame or maybe because they just get a great energy rush from it, or both, or whatever. And so, making yourself visible is really important.
Definitely.
for your brand, but it's hard to do, and that's why you have to get a bunch of people in your corner. And of
And
course, social
branding
media. Sorry, go ahead.
and branding's about culture, right? You're creating a culture within, the subculture of music. So,
Mhm.
if you are whatever your name is, you're trying to create that brand and you want people to follow you, you want to develop an organic engagement,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
Organic engagement is always the best. It's kind of like, if you've never been, if you're in Canada, you've never been to Port Dover's Friday the 13th, go there sometime, because it started with one guy who told one guy who told one guy who told one guy who told somebody else who told somebody else. And
Right.
next thing you know, it's now 100, 180, 200,000 people that show up to this event,
Right.
right?
And the event is basically a motorcycle rally. Everybody
It,
drives their motorcycles to Port Dover.
it
Don't they call it the devil in Dover?
well, it started with a couple of guys who just
Yeah.
decided that they were going to meet there on a Friday the 13th.
Right.
And so they told somebody else who told somebody else. Next thing you know, it ended up being one of the biggest, bike get-togethers, you know,
Yeah.
in America. So
Yeah.
it just goes to prove that organic growth makes things go, and it's been going for years, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that event's been going for years, the same as the one in Sturgis. It's the same deal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so the same thing can happen in music, that whole organic following.
Yes.
But if you've got, 100 followers on social media and you're going to put your music out there, don't hold your breath.
No. But
And
let's say
I'm not
so.
saying it to be crass. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like, you got to get a following. You got to get an organic following of
Mhm.
people, and not just any organic following of people. You got to get an organic following people that are going to stream your music, download your music, and get their friends to do the same thing.
Right. Now, let me just say that a band that I know of, small band, they have 280 followers on Instagram. I checked tonight.
Yeah.
So that's not a lot,
No.
but they play in a small area, in a small town.
Yeah.
And so let's say by engaging just on Instagram alone, they might be on Twitter, they might be on Facebook.
Yeah.
Actually, no, they're on Facebook. So, but just on Instagram alone, to communicate to those 280 followers that they're going to be playing at a small bar, they might be able to fill that bar just with their social media and fill it, like 50, 75 people, 100 people, just with that. So that can work even on a small level.
Provided those people live in the geographic area
Yes.
that you're speaking of. But you know
Yes.
what? I been there, done that. Sorry, it doesn't
Yeah.
work.
Okay.
Like, had tons of followers, hundreds of followers, and you advertise that you're playing a live show, and none of those people show up at your live
Okay.
show.
Okay. Well,
But
that's
but
just me kind of taking
but
a
it
guess on the
but
effectiveness of that. But
it can be effective. It
yeah.
depends on how well engaged your audience is. That's what I'm saying. If it's just people who just follow you for the heck of it and just
Yeah.
like you for the heck of it, they're not engaged.
Right.
If they come out to your live shows, buy your merch, download your albums, and they stream your music or get other people to stream it, they're an engaged fan,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're your bread and butter. They're the people that make life possible for you if you need to depend upon that income, because those are the people that are going to part with their hard-earned money to hear you live and buy your music and your
Yeah.
merchandise.
And with that in mind, I would like to remind anybody who's following a small band,
Yeah.
like, do what you can, other than going to see them live, but pick up some merch if you can, right? Spend that 25, $30. I ordered a toque from our buddies over at Boiler Beach. I ordered my toque today, and Andrea and Terry are going to send down my toque. We had them on the show a few weeks ago, right? And they just seem like a great bunch of people who are working hard to keep this band going. And so I thought, well, I want to support these guys. And so anybody who's out there, if you have a few bucks, if you can afford to support a band like that, a small band, by downloading their music legally, paying for it, or buying their merch. It really helps. It helps.
Okay, we're gonna move to the top of the hour and wrap
Okay.
up the show, Tom.
Yep.
Just want to give a quick shameless plug here. This is us. This is indietunes.com. That's our website. Check us out. We help artists get their music out there. We do global publishing administration for artists, as well as promo and get them on radio play, all that good stuff, and playlists and stuff. And Tom, I have to tell you, since I made the announcement the other day, Helix broke over 300,000 monthly listeners on Spotify alone.
Oh my God, that's
Um,
great.
we were 307,000 just a few short days ago, and in less than a week, we are at 318,817 monthly listeners.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's
awesome.
just people listening to their music. So talk about, this is a band that's been around for 40 years, and we're working hard to keep them relevant. And they still put on a great show whenever they play live. So
That's
worth
awesome.
going to see. Anyways, I just wanted to share that with you folks. Give us a shout. Let us know good, bad, and indifferent about the show. Give us some feedback. Tom, always a pleasure to do a show with you, man.
Yeah, well, I would like to do an amendment about you saying good, bad, or indifferent with your comments. If you like the show, tell everybody, and if you don't like the show, tell us.
That
Right?
helps a lot. That helps a lot, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah. And don't forget to check out my podcast. It's called Famous Lost Words. I co-host it with Christopher Ward, legendary Much Music VJ. You can find any artist, almost any artist that you could possibly think of. Famous artists from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. We've got Foo Fighters, we've got Duran Duran, we've got Tina Turner, Iron Maiden, Peter Frampton, Bon Jovi, the Stones, the Police, the Beatles, the Pretenders, Earth, Wind, and Fire. So many bands. You can find any one of those interviews. We have more than 100 episodes in total. And so you can find it on
Cyndi
the
Lauper
iHeartRadio.
doing the weather.
Say that again?
And Cyndi Lauper doing the weather.
Wasn't that funny? She did the weather on our morning show. It was so freaking funny. It was at the very end. We said goodbye to her. And then at the very end, somebody said, let's get Cindy to do the weather before we go. Exactly. And she does the weather in her New York accent, right? And just her accent is funny. And the way she talks and the way she does just a simple weather report. There's moments like that all the time. So iHeartRadio app or Apple Podcasts or Spotify for Famous Lost Words.
Well, from Tom, and I'm Kenny, you are not. Have a great night, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Take care.